Before we start today's episode, I want to mention one quick thing. If you're listening to Listen, Read, Interact because you actually want to understand and speak Spanish better, hello, Tacoma Language Academy has a free Spanish placement quiz. A little quiz you can take. It only takes a few minutes, and it can give you a rough idea of what your current level is. So if you're an A1 learner, a beginner, or an A2, or a B1, or a B2, intermediate learner. And it will also recommend you the next step. So go to tacomalanguage.com and click the placement quiz link at the top of the page, tacomalanguage.com. One more time, that's tacomalanguage.com. Ok, con eso, vamos a empezar. Hola, y bienvenidos a otro episodio de Listen, Read, Interact. Welcome to another episode of Listen, Read, Interact. This is episode number 92. My name is Andrew Snyder, and I am the host of the Listen, Read, Interact podcast. I am a Spanish language professor and instructor and content creator. And I've been teaching Spanish for 16, 17 years, something like that. And the more that I do it, the more I learn how it is that we acquire language, and the more I see the ways I can help people along the path. If you're brand new to Spanish, you might want to check out a course that I've written. It's a free course. It's at listenreadinteract.com/start. It's called Start Here. And it targets some very high-frequency vocabulary. It's free. There's no login or anything like that, but it's a value-for-value course. And listenreadinteract.com/start. Start here. That's a good place to start. Funny. The trick with learning language, and when we talk about it in terms of academics, we say acquiring language. There's a difference between conscious learning and the subconscious process that is acquisition. So there's a technical difference between those two words, although when we talk, normally we can interchange those, right? But the way you acquire a language is that you build up a mental representation of the language inside your head. You build a mental model of the language. And at first, your model is not very sophisticated. On my desk here in front of me, I have actually several small elephants. And I'm looking at a few of them here. This one here is a 3D printed elephant, and it's not very sophisticated. I can tell what it is. It's got a tail, it's got a trunk, it's got the big floppy ears, it's big and round and all of that. But it's a little 3D printed elephant, and I can tell what it is, but it's not very sophisticated. Next to it, I have a little glass elephant I don't even know how they would make something like this, but it is more sophisticated. It's got the tusks, it's got colors, it looks a bit more like an elephant. And then next to that one, I have a little rubber elephant that's a toy, and it looks very convincing as an elephant. If you weren't aware of the fact that there are no such thing as tiny elephants, except in the cartoons, then you might be, maybe that's the size of an elephant. It looks very convincing. And the mental model inside your head is kind of like those elephants on my desk, where over time, as you get more exposure to Spanish or whatever language you're trying to learn, and in our case, we're learning Spanish on the Listen, Read, Interact podcast, that mental model of Spanish will become more and more like that of a native speaker's. And now again, at first, it's not going to be very sophisticated. That's normal. But over time, as you get more listening, as you get more reading, as you get more what we call input, and specifically input that carries a message that you can understand, your brain naturally develops a more complex, a more complete model of the language, a more representative model inside your head. And that's the thing that you use to speak. So when you go to say something in another language, you use that mental model to try to express that idea that's in your head. And if English is your native language, well, obviously, you're going to be in really good shape to communicate in English because that mental model will be very developed. But if Spanish is your native language, then you're going to use that mental model for Spanish. But as an adult learner, you're also able to continually build, and every learner does this, not just adults. You build that mental representation of language. You build that mental model of the language, and then you use that to speak. And over time, as it becomes more sophisticated, you sound more like a native speaker. Now, there's two ways to get that language in your head, and I mentioned them already. Listening and reading. Those are the only two ways. There's no other way to get language into your head. So if you want to build that mental model and build it fast, you should be targeting listening, you should be targeting reading. Those are the two ways to get language in your head, and when the language is in your head, that's the language that you use to communicate. So if you want to get better at speaking Spanish, you need to be listening to Spanish. If you want to get better at speaking Spanish, reading actually is a skill that kind of sits on top of listening inside your head. They've done some studies, and they found that the same areas of the brain light up, whether you're hearing a story or reading that story. So both of those skills, listening and reading, if you can build on those, then that mental model will start to grow. Now, you can't just turn on the Spanish radio station and listen if you don't know any Spanish, because that language will be too sophisticated. It'll be too hard to get at. It's too complicated. It's not comprehensible enough. And it turns out that we need to understand the messages that we hear in the language that we're trying to acquire, or we will not acquire those languages. Our brains are really good at filtering out noise. And if there's a bunch of sounds that come your way and they don't carry a message, your brain will not acquire because your brain filters it out as noise. That language processing center in your brain says, nope, that's noise. We got to get rid of that because that's not helpful. It doesn't carry a message. It's not meaningful in any way. Like bird song. We listen to bird song. It's very pretty. I like to have the window open and listen to birds, but I don't know what the birds are saying, and I never will unless I get some sort of clue, some sort of message that I can understand, and then maybe I can start to figure out bird song. But if there's no message to understand, then your brain filters it out as noise in terms of language acquisition. Yes, it's pretty, but it's noise. It doesn't have any meaning to me, to the learner. All right, so listen, read, interact then. Interact, that's the last bit. Obviously, the name of the show is Listen, Read, Interact, and the last bit is interact. And that last bit is important too, because interacting with the language that you hear, interacting with the language that you read, kind of signals to your brain that it's important. It also is a way for you to test out the language subconsciously. So when you're trying to say something in Spanish, you might not say it exactly like a native speaker would, especially at the beginning. But the fact that you're trying to use the language signals to your brain that it's important, that this is how we're trying to communicate now, and that is a signal to your brain that's important to start to build that mental representation out, because it's like, hey, we want to be efficient here. We don't want to be constantly burning these calories trying to figure out how to say stuff. We just want to say the stuff. And so if it can build out that mental representation of language, it becomes easier to speak. Now, listen, read, interact. Listen, read, interact. Now, obviously on the show, it's a podcast, and so you'll be able to hear some language on the show. There's going to be some example sentences and then 2 versions of a short story that we'll hear. But if you want to read as well, you can go to the show notes page. listenreadinteract.com/92, since this is episode 92. And there's also some interactive activities on the show notes page. For me, the show notes page are worth the price of admission because there's a ton of value there. Okay. You're going to hear a bell. And when you hear that bell, we'll move on to some example sentences. You'll hear another bell, and we'll move on to the brief reading, a short first-person singular version of the story. First person anyway. I think it's singular this time. And then we'll have the final section, which is the complete reading, a little bit longer, and that's really our goal, is to get to that complete reading and have it be more understandable, more comprehensible, easier for you to listen and just understand. And it takes time, it takes practice. Maybe you have to listen more than once. You maybe have to go to the show notes page and read along with the example sentences, with the short stories that have footnotes to help you with some likely unfamiliar vocabulary and such. But that is the idea. If we can get to that third part, listen to that long story, and then interact with it with the ways that are on the show notes page. And there's many other ways to interact as well. You could do a scriptorium exercise, or when there's various ways to interact. That's the idea, huh? That's how you're going to get better at Spanish, is by listening, reading, and understanding. And there are no shortcuts. As I tell my students, there's no shortcut to getting fluent at Spanish. Anyone who's got a shortcut for you is selling you something. There is none. So just takes your effort of listening, reading, and interacting, and on a daily basis, doing it every day if you can. 7 days a week, 6 days a week at the minimum, 5 days a week. However much time you put into processing messages in Spanish, listening and reading, and then interacting. It really is like a numbers game. How many hours can you put in? If it's 10 hours a week, you're going to make a lot of progress very quickly. If it's 5 hours a week, your progress is going to be halved, And really, the first 250 hours are probably the hardest, but they also provide the biggest reward. Like, that curve is hard at first, and then you jump through those 250 hours, and you're actually pretty fluent after 250 hours of processing. Dedicated processing, listening, reading, and interacting with messages you can understand, right about at your level. Sometimes a little bit harder than your level. All right, let's get started. Vamos a empezar. Ejemplos. Número 1. Me llamo Cristóbal. Me llamo Cristóbal. Me llamo Cristóbal. 2. Soy de la ciudad de Guatemala. Soy de la ciudad de Guatemala. Soy de la ciudad de Guatemala. 3. No tengo dinero. No tengo dinero. No tengo dinero. 4. Estoy desempleado. Estoy desempleado. Estoy desempleado. 5. Estoy triste porque no tengo un mono. Estoy triste porque no tengo un mono. Estoy triste porque no tengo un mono. 6. Voy al zoológico. Voy al zoológico. Voy al zoológico. 7. Entro en el recinto de los monos. Entro en el recinto de los monos. Entro en el recinto de los monos. 8. Ahora vivo en el zoológico con los monos. Ahora vivo en el zoológico con los monos. Ahora vivo en el zoológico con los monos. Lectura breve. Me llamo Cristóbal. Soy de la ciudad de Guatemala, la capital del país. Soy un hombre alto. Tengo muchos problemas. Por ejemplo, no tengo dinero. No tengo dinero porque no tengo un trabajo. Porque estoy desempleado. Estoy desempleado porque soy tonto y muy feo. Estoy muy triste. ¿Por qué estoy triste? Pues estoy triste porque no tengo un mono. Quiero un mono, pero no lo tengo. Así que voy al zoológico y hablo con un hombre que trabaja ahí. Pido un mono, pero el hombre dice que no puedo tenerlo. Pero yo realmente quiero un mono. Entro en el recinto de los monos y agarro un mono. Otro mono laquea la puerta. ¡Clic! Trato de salir, pero no puedo. Pero no estoy triste. Ahora vivo en el zoológico con los monos. Estoy contento. Listen, Read, Interact is a value for value podcast. And so I try to give away as much value as I can. I feel like if I can help the most number of people to learn Spanish, to acquire Spanish, as I talked about at the beginning of this episode, that difference between learning and acquisition, I feel like I'm doing my part, you know? Like I learning to speak other languages has really unlocked the world for me. And it changed my life in a very, very positive way. And so I want to help you to do the same thing. And so what I do is I try to just put it all out there into the world. I've written books and I've written lots of materials for language learners, and most of it I'm just putting it out into the world for it to be out there. And I want it to be as helpful and useful as possible. And I try to use the tricks and things that I've learned about language acquisition and teaching languages to design each episode and to write these stories and the like. So it's a fun process for me, and I hope that it's useful and valuable for you. And if you're getting value out of this show, there's 92 episodes now, please consider sending some value back this way to help it keep going. My goal is to do 100 episodes, and then from there I'm going to reevaluate. And so if you're liking this, you're enjoying the Spanish stories and the examples and such, please consider sending value back this way. You can do that by making a donation at listenreadinteract.com/donate. listenreadinteract.com/donate. There's a link also in the episode description. You can do a PayPal donation or a Stripe donation. Any amount is great. It all helps. Those $4 weekly sustaining donations are great as well. I was telling my mom about this. She's like, what is this podcast that you're doing? That's not how she talks, but it's how I talk for her. And I told her, well, I don't sell ads or anything because that's dumb. I don't want ads. I hate listening to a podcast and all of a sudden an ad comes on. I don't mind it when people ask for money, though. That doesn't bother me at all because, the people who make stuff that you consume, you need to support it, right? It needs to be supported. And if you don't do it, then no one else is going to. Like, you got to step up and do that. And I was telling my mom about it, like, hey, so I think about it like a PBS station. There's actually a local station around where we live, and they're doing jazz and stuff on the radio, which I love to hear the jazz. And they're 100% listener supported. No advertisements. It's just, we're going to tell you a little bit about the jazz. We're going to play the jazz, maybe some news in between or something. But it's a local station, and it only runs on listener support, and that's what this is. Think of it like a local Spanish acquisition station, and all I do is help you learn Spanish. And it's very much like that. And the only way that it continues is with your support, and I am so appreciative of everyone who has donated in the past, and those people who are on those smaller donations to help out when times are slow. So, hey, thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Let's get back to the show with that complete reading. This is really the target for this episode. And so if you are already understanding the examples and those brief 8 sentences at the beginning and the short story, you're ready to move on to this last bit, which is the complete reading. Same story, but longer third-person version, so it's going to sound different to your ear. It's good to listen to both of those. The first person, the I form is good because you want to talk about yourself a lot, and so that's one you have to listen to in order to be able to say it. And the other one is the he or she form, and that's a good one as well. Because most of what you're going to hear is actually this higher frequency he or she form. That's the most frequent form that you'll hear, and probably by far. So, okay. Con eso vamos a continuar. Lectura completa. El recinto de los monos. Hay un hombre. Es de la ciudad de Guatemala, la capital del país. Su nombre es Cristóbal. Es un hombre alto y tonto. También es feo. Es muy feo. La gente que pasa en la calle dice, ¡ay, qué feo! Cristóbal tiene muchos problemas. Problema número 1, no tiene dinero. Cristóbal no tiene dinero porque no tiene un trabajo. Está desempleado porque es tonto y muy feo. Problemas números 2 y 3. Es muy feo y tonto. Pero el problema más grande de Cristóbal es que no tiene un mono. Quiere un mono, pero no lo tiene. El miércoles, Cristóbal está en su casa. Está mal. Está triste porque no tiene un mono. Quiere llorar. Así que Cristóbal va al zoológico. Hay un hombre que trabaja en el zoológico. Cristóbal decide hablar con el hombre. Pide un mono. Le dice, hola, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes, dice el hombre que trabaja en el zoológico. ¿Puedo tener un mono?, pregunta Cristóbal. No, dice el hombre que trabaja en el zoológico. Usted no puede tener un mono. Esto no es un mercado de animales. No es una tienda de mascotas. Cristóbal está muy triste. Quiere llorar. Pero entonces tiene una idea. Cristóbal entra en el recinto de los monos y agarra un mono. En este momento, otro mono laquea la puerta. ¡Clic! Cristóbal trata de salir, pero no puede. La puerta está laqueada. Cristóbal no está triste ahora. Ahora Cristóbal está contento porque vive en el zoológico con los monos. Bueno, very good if you made it this far. Make sure you are listening and reading and interacting with Spanish on a daily basis. That's really how you're going to pick up Spanish over the long term. Doesn't have to be the show necessarily, but the show is designed to help you, especially at these beginning and intermediate phases. So that's really the idea here, huh? Listen, read, interact. You can go to the show notes page. You can read along. You can do the interactive activities that are there, the comprehension questions, the true or false. You can click on the example sentences and see their translations and such. Many great things, many fantastic experiences at the show notes page. Thank you so much again for all of you who are supporting the show. You can help us out at listenreadinteract.com/donate. A new episode comes out every Saturday. And so, feliz 4 de julio, feliz Día de la Independencia, que es hoy. Y espero que lo celebren responsablemente, ¿eh? Responsablemente. Nos vemos, que les vaya muy bien. Muchas gracias. Y hasta la próxima.